Hello everyone, my name is Marilyn Crew and I am the Economic Development Officer here in Neepawa, Manitoba. First of all, I'd like to thank Lindsay for the opportunity to highlight Neepawa at the Immigration on the Prairies Summit that you're all participating in today. This was recorded in December, so hence the lovely Christmas decorations behind us. But I'm going to pass this over to Don to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Don Walmsley. I'm the Executive Director of the Neepawa and Area Immigrant Settlement Services organization here in Neepawa. Welcome.
And my name is Rain Pryor. I am the News Director here at NACTV, where we are recording this today. And I'm the facilitator of this conversation today, where we're talking about how we have grown our community through immigration. So let's start right at the beginning, or as far as the beginning as we can. And now our community didn't make a community decision to go into immigration. How did it start?
Exactly. So Neepawa is a little bit different in the fact that immigration embedded itself in our community through a single employer. So High Life Foods is Canada's leading pork producer and exporter of pork around the world. And High Life uses a temporary foreign worker program to staff their plant here in Neepawa.
Okay, so is that the only avenue, or is that just the starting point?
That is by far the predominant method where people immigrants come to Canada, or come to Neepawa. There are others through other programs. There's an international French program. There can be student visas. But by far, the vast majority come through there. That's the driver of immigration.
So that
here.
For Neepawa, that is
yes,
what is
without
the driver.
question.
Mm-hmm. So what partners were then involved when we started doing this, and what investment came from each of those?
So I would say that the initial partner that is now at the table is High Life Foods, because they use the temporary foreign worker program to meet their staffing demands at the growing plant. So we'll talk about it more, but they've gone from 400 employees to 1,600 employees in a very short period of time. And being a rural community, it's very difficult to staff at that level without immigration.
Right.
So settlement services?
Yes. A representative of settlement services started here in 2008. The real immigration started to really start flowing in 2010, and then just subsequently just sort of built. At that time, the settlement services program, while funded by the feds, was operated by the province, which was a different way of looking at things, and things developed from a settlement perspective differently. In 2013, it was repatriated by the federal government, which took, again, a different flavor.
Right.
In essence, what we see here now, and I'll talk about now, I could talk about before, but now, we see on average 200 temporary foreign workers arrive every year. We see on average between 600 to 800 new permanent residents land every year as families of people who were temporary foreign workers are coming and landing. So there's quite a volume of movement here, and it's consistent. And that's due, again, I'm talking pretty much exclusively coming through the High Life window. But what we're seeing is, unlike other communities where you might see your immigrants come and then move to something else, we certainly have a proportion that does that. However, you can see by the growth rate that's been tremendous in the past 10 years, from 3,400 as a standard for 70 years to 6,000 plus now.
Yeah.
Retention has not been an issue. Retention's issue is things like housing. We'll talk more about that later. So the settlement service program has grown because settlement services is there to help newcomers integrate into not only the community they're in, but generally speaking to Canadian society. That involves the workplace, that involves education, it involves socialization. So we do things like, we have an English language training program. We have an employment officer specifically targeted for permanent residents, for example. We have a settlement workers in schools program where we assist students and help the students, the family, and our education system make the optimized benefit of the education. We do a whole bunch of other things as well.
that's where we started to where we are now.
Yeah.
Looking towards the future, what other, partners or investments might be needed?
Well, there's a few other partners that I
Yeah.
think that from the municipal side are at the table to and are required. So like our planning district, since 2013 has handled 177 million in building permits as part of the growth of our community. So we need to understand this as a holistic view of what the impacts are. The federal and provincial government, like the temporary foreign worker program is not possible without them. Settlement services is not possible without that level of funding. Even some of the investment that the municipality has done has been leveraged through federal and provincial programming. So those partners are vital at the table. And then I would say also like town council. A town council with vision through this whole process, because this is driven by a business that's growing. And so the communication between the business and the municipality is important to keep up with the pace, because as this business grows, and in economic terms, it's a wet industry. So there's a lot of demand around water and how they handle their sewage. But then there's also, we now have all these additional people traveling on our roads and using our infrastructure and recreation programs and community programs. And so it takes vision for council to see what is needed next when this is it's a very quick pace of growth for a community.
We've been very lucky with our councils, last two specifically, but even before, understood there was a need, tried to be proactive and move towards it. But we also need to talk about the investment and engagement of the business community. It's hard to find a business here in town that doesn't have at least one newcomer in it. The education community has really stepped up. We've needed a new school, which is already at max. We can use more schooling now. The healthcare system, there's been so many things. So if you take a look at a microcosm, we grew 27% over two 5-year periods, 27% each year, roughly. So when you take a look at, let's say Winnipeg did that, what would it look like? Well, we're a microcosm and an example of how a community can adapt and has to adapt quickly, because these aren't sort of slow, progressive kinds of things. Suddenly, well, within a year, we suddenly got all these new people, and it keeps building and building. So there's been a real strong investment and support from within the community from a variety of sectors.
And that really leads me into what I wanted to talk about next, which was what are the kind of issues that the town has faced and continues to face as this immigrant population, as this workforce grows?
So there is such pressure put on a community. So I would say that the one way that the temporary foreign worker program differs from other immigration strategies is that the temporary foreign workers come in, like they don't even have a driver's license, and they're not buying a home right away. So people say, oh, well, you have a larger population, you get a larger tax base. But that's not the case with temporary foreign workers, because often they rent a room in a house. So there's increased demand on municipal infrastructure, but there's no reciprocation in residential tax revenue. So there has been a lot of investment from the town just based on growth. So our new lagoon project, for example, and now we have a reservoir that's required in order to keep capacity. So and just for clarity too, for anyone who's in the municipal world out there, High Life uses roughly 50% of all the water that's produced by the town of Neepawa. So that's a huge commitment from the municipality. So we have to always stay ahead of that. But it's also something that it's a commitment to High Life, because without that water, they're not operating. Yeah. So it's reciprocal that way. And I'm not even sure I just answered your question, right?
Well, and just to sort of add to that, if people aren't talking and working together, things don't happen. Now, are we a perfect system? Do we not have other things to learn, or as we look, as we vision forward? Definitely. But we wouldn't be here today without partnerships, without people sitting down and saying, how can we help this? And we've seen different ideations of that as we move forward over the past 10 years specifically. It's been quite a journey and continues to be quite a journey.
And this is a question that's sort of, I think, specific to High Life as the person or the employer bringing in the vast majority of people, as you've said, is what immigration strategies are being used or being implemented?
Okay, so I want to be clear. I did invite High Life to join us today. Unfortunately, they didn't have a staff, but they did provide me with information to pass on. So
Excellent.
I'm actually just going to read that so that I don't mess it up for High Life. So when High Life purchased the production plant in 2008, the plant was operational under Spring Hill Farms that employed approximately 400 employees with a single shift of operation. In 2012, High Life started the process to add a second shift to the processing plant, which was our first real jump in immigration. We made a strong effort to hire locally. On our journey to create a strong workforce, we hired foreign workers and newcomers. At the time, the rural community did not have a high immigrant population. That's an understatement. We are committed to settling the new hires up for success and work tirelessly to ensure that they are able to settle in a new country. Whenever there's a large influx of people into the community in a short period of time, there are bound to be some challenges along the way, such as housing availability, settling in a new country, and sufficient resources to assist in settling them in the community. The town of Neepawa, alongside High Life and other members of the community, put together several committees and resources to help welcome and support the new employees into the town and surrounding area. Since 2008, High Life has invested over $258 million to expand and improve the Neepawa plant. There are now 1,650 employees thriving at High Life and in Neepawa and the surrounding communities. Without the support of the Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, the town of Neepawa, Neepawa Settlement Services, our school division, and other key members of the community, our success of bringing in immigrants would not be what it is today. For clarity, High Life uses the MPNP, Manitoba Provincial Nominee Program, to get the temporary foreign workers into Neepawa. Our Economic Development Officer for the town of Neepawa has been a huge part of our success with integration, with creating committees to brainstorm ways to overcome housing shortages, to work alongside High Life to plan a future growth within the community. The town of Neepawa has played an essential role in High Life's success in integrating our foreign workers and bringing their families to join our wonderful community. High Life Foods today currently employs over 1,600 people, and this would not be possible without the support of a great province, a wonderful town, and a welcoming community.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to throw this to Dawn for a second, just to explain what the Provincial Nominee Program is, because that is specific to Manitoba. Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost every province has a nomination program. It's a federal ticket that allows an employer to bring in a newcomer. How they bring them in can vary. In this case, they bring them in because if somebody, a new temporary foreign worker comes in, they have 6 months of regular employment where they can apply for the Provincial Nominee Program. And that's essentially a program that the province offers to sort of screen the individual who wants to stay in Canada, and more specifically in Manitoba. And if they feel that the person has met the criteria, then they provide a certificate of nomination. They nominate, and this is critical in the process for anybody who wants to become a permanent resident, because the provincial nominee pathway is a way that somebody coming in as a temporary foreign worker, working and living here, then is sanctioned by the province to move forward, has the opportunity to apply for the permanent resident status. That's the key piece. Almost all our individuals coming here into Neepawa, they want to become permanent residents. Yeah. They're not here simply as a seasonal worker or temporary for any length of time. So the High Life's comment about the PNP program, they've worked hand in glove with them for years, and it's been extremely effective. Very effective.
Thank you. Thank you. So then the community has seen a lot of new people, a lot of growth. How is the community now dealing with the needs of the areas of childcare, education, healthcare, and infrastructure?
Yes, 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 and yes. So this level of
ones,
growth
wow, and wow.
Yeah.
You've asked it,
puts pressure on all of those things. So we're thankful that the province stepped up to help with the expansion of our school to include a new middle school and a new daycare with 72 spots. And as mentioned, like our school is already full again. The pressure on those community services that are outside of municipal jurisdiction, the pressures are there as well. Right. I want to say it was 2018, 2017, I heard anecdotally, we had 90 babies potentially being born in our hospital in a single year. So, I mean, it puts pressure, not just on the hospital, but on all of those steps along the way for the children. I would also say that there were other ways that we tried to deal with housing, for example, which we're going to talk about more, but our local Kinsman Seniors group applied for, it's called a co-investment fund from CMHC, and they built a 48-suite assisted living facility. And you think, oh, well, what does seniors have to do with immigration? But it's all about ensuring that all of those aspects of the housing market are here. And it's about ways of partnering to get additional money into the community to help make that happen. And there's been private investment as well. And most recently being constructed out on the CN land is 4 townhouse units that is actually supported by High Life, and they're going to be operated kind of like a boarding house. They're 4-bedroom apartments, but each bedroom is rented out separately to the new temporary foreign workers that are coming in. And that's in a way to help reduce the pressure on our housing market.
Right. So before we really do a deep dive on housing, which we can certainly talk a lot about, again, let's talk about the families coming in, because these programs are bringing in the workers, but then the families are coming. And I think that is where we're seeing a lot of pressure on the community, is in those areas of education, that sort of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Surprisingly enough, the services and needs that develop within a community are really based on the demographic of the clients coming in and the process where they come in, by the way they come in. So with our people coming in, the vast majority are coming into jobs already, unionized jobs. So there's some sense of security. There's an opportunity to grow and to build. It's not like they're coming here and they're looking for jobs. The community, the demographic, the vast majority of our newcomers here are from the Philippines. In the Philippines, they do a lot of their education in English already. So there is a variation of English language skill sets amongst both the children and the adults. They operate from a K-12 system now. So coming into a K-12 system here, there's sort of assimilation that occurs. But it's the numbers that put the challenge thing in. Socialization, if you bring someone, let's say you bring someone here from Afghanistan. We have no Afghanis here in town. So the sense of isolation, it becomes more of a factor than when you have, 2,000 people from the Philippines here. You're bound to find somebody you can connect with or have some kind of either community affiliation or whatever. So there are a number of different dynamics. So education has been hit big time. When you get a large population in and you have growth, other things happen concomitantly, right? We now have announcement of a brand new hospital, which is going to increase it's going to create, well, you've said it, it's going to be our second biggest industry. Certain healthcare professionals, so internationally medically trained individuals will be required, more housing will be required, more schooling will be required. It's been an amazing journey watching how people partner here and stepping up and the level of acceptance in the community, because we've changed from a fairly sedentary agricultural and sort of quasi-retirement community to something that's bustling and crazy and kids in the streets and vibrant and growing. And it's been quite interesting.
And changed rapidly.
Changed rapidly.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of
the key is the speed with which this has all happened and how people have stepped up to the plate and done the best they can. And I think we're doing a pretty good job. Can we do better? Of course.
And I think that, that's one of the key factors in our immigration is the age of the people that are immigrating. So as as Don alluded to, it was more of we were promoted as a retirement town, and now when you look at the census data, the majority of our population is under 45.
Yep.
So that's and certainly the immigration numbers. That's where it's at, is those young families, which brings this whole vibrancy to Neepawa.
People opening businesses.
Exactly.
And all kinds of things. Yeah.
We've got a lot of newcomers being entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And it's wonderful. And you just, it's become part and part of the fabric. And we're seeing that more and more. And one of the things we haven't talked about was sort of alluded to, Marilyn talked about Neepawa area. We've had big secondary migration to places like Gladstone, now more to Minnedosa. We've had smaller communities like Arden, Eden, Carver. We've had,
and these are all within a
those
half
kinds
hour
of
drive of us or less.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's affected the area, not just simply this community.
You know, I'm just going to take a little brief detour here. Do you want to talk about entrepreneurship a bit? Because that is a big thing.
Absolutely. That has been an exciting part of the growth that happens, is that our newcomers have this entrepreneurial spirit, the spirit that they brought with them from the Philippines. And I get calls weekly at my office. Somebody wants to come in for a business consult to talk about their business idea. And certainly we've seen it on our main street, the impact of our newcomer population to Filipino bakeries.
I know.
It's just
the food's incredible.
It's been an amazing transition for our community. And that's one thing from an economic development side is when you look at many small rural communities, their downtowns are, there's empty storefronts, or, they've transitioned to more residential area, even in the downtown core. Neepawa, it's not easy to find a small commercial space for my new business startups, because we have a vibrant downtown.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the same statement 10 years ago.
Not at all.
There was space. And as Marilyn says, that's changed now, all because of this and the entrepreneurship. It's been wonderful. And others, it's allowed for other people to come in for entrepreneurships as well. We haven't had a furniture store for years.
Exactly.
We used to have two back in the 80s. Now we have another vibrant furniture store. It's so many ways it's been positive and good.
A toy store.
We have a toy store.
Toy store coming in.
Pet store.
Yes, a pet
Yes,
store. Yeah, those things that once a community hits that certain threshold, now we see this opportunity because there's enough people living here to keep these small businesses
and young
going.
people and families and things like that. All right, let's do it. Let's talk housing. Does Neepawa have a housing strategy? Where did it come from? Where is it going?
So, do you want to talk about what happened before I came here, Don? A little bit about that initial housing committee?
It's been a work in progress, to say it politely. Housing has always been there, not as it has been there subtly. At first, we're not sure of the numbers, because remember, initially the numbers weren't great in terms of newcomers coming in, and then expansion took place, and then suddenly numbers are growing, and we're doing all that kind of thing. So housing was talked about a lot. Different sectors were engaged and spoken to, but as a clear-cut definitive strategy, there wasn't one. Okay, there just wasn't one, but there was a lot of good ideas. Some things happened, but really the pace drove so much, and there was so much unknown, because when you're getting that trickle in, and then suddenly, boom, you've got a whole bunch, and there was available housing. And Marilyn stated earlier the importance of having something like the local Kinsman develop that 48 apartment or 48 person assisted living, frees up homes within the community available for purchase. But at some point you run out. And we have reached that point, essentially, where all the land available within the town, owned by the town, has virtually been taken up. We need another school. We need at least 150 to 200 housing units going forward if we're looking at the next 10 years or 20 years.
Which brings us, I think, to you.
Speaking of which, so Neepawa is currently in the RFP process for both a needs and demand study and a housing strategy for the next decade. So part of the ask of this RFP is not just around our immigration numbers, but also the impact of a new hospital and the staff that will be required for that. This will be done through public consultation. There will be good community engagement from all of this and discussion with like realtors, local developers, so that we truly understand where the housing market is and where it could be. And then this will also, so this will help in several different ways. It'll help developers. It'll help potential landowners here in town that may have areas that could be suitable for development, but it'll also help council to inform decisions. They'll have data and strategies to inform moving forward what those next steps, what those decisions should be at the council table. So I would say that part of what this committee did early on, they did a whole study with the newcomers that were at High Life and kind of helped to inform, what newcomers were looking for. And I think now this needs and demands is going to build on that information and take us for the next 10 years.
So actually we'll have a strategy going forward.
We will, rather than just the data.
And we need one. And when you take a look at it, our newcomer population tends to want to buy their own. Now there's a desperate need for rental as well that we see in that process, but there are other plans in place. We'll probably talk more in detail about helping newcomers buy their first home. So other jurisdictions, provincial and federal, have recognized that there needs to be additional support. It's not just come here, work, buy your home. There are other kinds of things that need to be assisted and facilitated, and it's all a work in progress. But again, so many different partners come to play that you don't think of that suddenly step up. Yep. It's neat.
So let's just talk about you for a second. We've touched on this quite a bit just throughout this, but what is sort of the role of settlement services to help the businesses and the workers to adapt?
Settlement Services is a federally funded program funded by the Department of Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada. Its mandate is to assist and facilitate newcomers, most specifically permanent residents. But we have another program that works with temporary foreign workers, but this one for predominantly permanent residents, to integrate within Canadian society. That means within their home community. That means understanding and participating within the educational system, within the social setup, to understand the workplace culture, the diversity in workplace, anything and everything, domestic issues, challenges with navigating the Canadian paperwork landscape. What I say to all newcomers is Canada is a land of forms, it's a land of rules and regulations, and it's a land of wait times. And you need to just understand that their processes and things get done, but it can be a bit slower. And so we're there to assist in any way we can. The questions we get, just picture yourself as a regular human being and some of the questions you might have. We'll get them from the newcomer's perspective. So things like the English language. I'm just currently piloting 2 preschool programs to help newcomer parents with preschool children understand what's available for them in Canada. Things like nursery schools or how to prepare for kindergarten, that kind of thing. Yeah. So anything and everything. We can deal with seniors. So it's all the way from newly arrived, new births as they grow and develop, finding different jobs, changing information, tons of referrals to existing, because we want them to understand that there are existing services that they are accessible to and should be using. So it's that combination. So we partner with them to sort of bring in information and do things. So our role is basically a catch-all. Often we field first information. If we can deal with it, we will. But We do an awful lot of referring out. We find out where to go. So that's basically our role. We're a big support.
And if you could just talk a little bit about how settlement services has grown in Neepawa over the past 10 years too.
In the past 10 years, we've gone from 2 part-time, 2 full-time, to 13 full-time and 4 part-time.
Whew.
That's the staff growth, and that growth actually was in the past 6 years.
Yeah.
So it's because of demand. It's because of need. It's there, and we're really fortunate. The federal government recognizes these kinds of needs in community and has been extremely supportive, and really a good partner to try and address needs as they come out. So it's been a really nice fit. Community, federal, employer. We work together and trying to meet the needs as they come along.
And this is because Neepawa, most of our immigration population is going towards permanent residents. We don't have these seasonal workers. That's right. What is specific to Neepawa.
We have the odd one, but they are very odd ones. This is by far a pathway to permanent residence. This is where people come.
And sorry, if I can just add that a really important part of what settlement does is partner in the community. There's been really great partnerships, I would say, from economic development and settlement services, but also with Westlake Employment. There's good cooperation going on in the community that builds strength and just helps people that are pathfinding to end up in the right place.
Well, education as well.
Education.
I mean, you know, it's
employers.
Employers, even the town. I mean, we have regular in-services from the town talking about how do you pay your water bill? Why would you pay your water bill? You know, where do you come if you have a question? Those kinds of things, and the importance of the housing district, and when you're looking at renovations or building or that kind of stuff, and all sorts of stuff.
Certainly from economic development too, people looking at starting their own business, and maybe it's a little different from here from the Philippines in that, you know, no, not every business you can just operate out of your home. So back to, you know, there's paper and process for everything. We all have the same message too. Yes.
So we've kind of touched on this as well quite a bit, but what other resources can a community use to its advantage?
So I would say a strong one is language. I said language services from settlement has allowed us to support families at all different levels, because language can end up in a cooking class, or it can be providing language specific for an employer, such as Touchwood.
We've done that before.
So I think that just really gives the immigration services the opportunity to inject themselves where they're needed around the community.
Big thing. Marilyn's hit it on the head. Language is a pathway. If you're limited in your language skills, your pathway is limited. The other big thing is because probably at least 30% of the people we see coming here are internationally educated. Teachers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, engineers, you name it, accountants. And one of the things that is a challenge, and is not just a challenge for us, but right across the sector, is the credential recognition program. And there's lots of things happening, and people are trying to look at this. But as a province, that's a big thing, because those are reliant upon the provincial organizations, the professional organizations. It's not anything we can do from an immigration or a settlement
is something that the province has identified as something they're working on.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's always something.
And I would say another opportunity, other resources, is around recreation. So newcomers made us look at our recreation a little bit differently, I would say. They may never have played hockey or thrown a curling rock in their life, which, you know, in a small rural community, those are the things. So it actually, we did a recreation master plan in 2018, and it really revealed the impact of our newcomers on our recreation demands. So basketball and cycling and I understand it's like second biggest basketball league outside of Winnipeg, but we'll see. So it's important to use recreation as an opportunity for integration in your community.
We have a 60+ member bike club.
Yes.
and competitive. Some of them are competitive bike clubs, and so the town springing on the idea of a bicycle park was perfect, and because there's a number of them now coming up, and it's recreational from training wheels, which I'm at, all the way up to competitive. But it's these kinds of things that you don't necessarily jump out at you to begin with.
No, this might be overlooked.
But we take a look at recreation. We take a look at the healthcare. We all know we need accessibility to doctors, that kind of thing, everywhere. Well, in a community like this, with the numbers that have grown, it's even more of an issue. So you deal with them as they come up. Sometimes you can project for things, but often they're just bang, whoa, okay, they're there in your face, and you have to deal with them and respond.
Just quickly, I would also add that churches are an access point, and also arts and culture. And so if you look at how arts and culture has allowed points of integration in our community, over time, I just wanted to round that out.
No, that's absolutely true. So, I mean, this kind of comes back to you now from your EDO perspective. What are your lessons learned and recommendations for using immigration to grow your community?
How much time do we have?
We don't have enough time. So I would say it comes back to communication and in different, in different areas. So, I mean, obviously communication with High Life as the key employer is an important one. But then also with employers in town. So so many of our employers saw that it served their business's purposes to hire the newcomers because then they do better customer service in their community. So another one that we tried, and maybe we need to look at it again, is a skills inventory. So in order to better understand the family that follows the temporary foreign worker, like these people are coming to Neepawa and we don't necessarily know what their education background is or what their skills background is. And so we worked with employment and settlement and economic development to try and get a better understanding of what those skills are that are coming into the community. And I would say that's an important lesson learned. Otherwise, you have half of the newcomers, right? One half is working at High Life, but the other half, the spouse, you don't know what those skill sets are. Partnering with settlement to do economic development discussions with newcomers has been an opportunity that I would say that has worked really well. Also partnering with settlement and employment to do job fairs. So it kind of ties all of us in with the employers, but also with the potential employees. It was like a perfect little ecosystem. And yeah, I would say that's, council. Council needs to better understand how their decisions impact immigrants. So as economic development, I feel that's part of my role, is to make sure that they're looking at decisions with that lens every time.
So you actually just mentioned communication. So how does Neepawa communicate with the community for this future plans, future development?
Well, like I mentioned with the housing study, and right now we're also doing an active transportation study. It's all about using every opportunity to have those community engagement pieces so that we're getting all voices at the table to inform those studies, those strategies as we're moving forward. And so we make a real effort as a municipality to do that community engagement piece, and then also putting information out.
So I will throw this to both of you. Is immigration positive for Neepawa after everything is said and done?
Yes.
Yes. That's the short answer. How
Unanimous.
much time do we have?
Yes.
So I would say that the proof is in the immigration number. So the last census, 23.3%, and the census before that, 27%. And for rural communities, immigration is one choice for growth, or find something else that works, because your other alternative is decline. So I think that if it's not immigration, you need to be looking at your community and finding out what actually works in order to grow your community. For us, immigration has brought diversity and vibrancy and prosperity to our community.
I just would echo what Marilyn says. I don't think you can say it any clearer. What I've observed is initially when you started to see, there was community saying, members, well, they're going to come and take our jobs. And, you know, there was some of that kind of thing. But frankly, as it's evolved, I just remember a comment. CBC was out here this past summer from the Filipino heritage thing, just to sort of get a sense. And they were incredibly impressed and surprised at how the community was just embracing it. And it had evolved to that point where it's just part of the community. You know, it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to probably run into a newcomer, whether that's at the co-op or McDonald's or at Home Hardware or the insurance agent. It doesn't really matter. It's just part and parcel of how that community is growing. And if you look back in Canadian history, we had that back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. We have waves of immigrants. This area in particular, Ukrainians and Polish people came way back, you know, pre-Second World War, immigrating, large populations out in the rural. So immigration like this is not new. It's just that this is our newest one.
Yeah,
exactly. And I would say that when you look at the community, you can always find those positive stories to talk about why immigration is working well for us, and those are the stories that we tell, right? Those are the stories in the community that you want to hear over and over, but also the stories that you want to tell outside of Neepawa to show that there is positive impact from immigration.
and I'm sure between us we could talk about this for another hour. But to wrap this up, what advice would you give to a community looking at immigration as a potential strategy?
There's always a reason to put it off for another day, but immigration, as we've said, takes time. So it's if this feels like a good fit for your community, your employers need employees, potentially even a succession plan. Take a look at what it takes for your community to get engaged in immigration sooner rather than later.
I'd say research. Reach out to other communities that have gone through it so you can get some of the positives, some of the challenges, and before you just step into it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. I think that kind of encapsulates our journey here in Neepawa, would you say?
Yes, thank you so much, Rain, for making this happen for us. And I think, we could probably do this again for another hour, but this so sums it up for Immigration on the Prairies Summit. And thank you so much for being a part of this today.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you all for joining us.